Welcome, listeners. You are listening to Technology Blows, the podcast where I, your host, Dan Slimman, just simply will not shut up about the bad technology that makes our world so annoying to live in. My guest today is none other than my esteemed friend and colleague, Mr. Manuel Wudka-Robles. How you doing, Manuel?
Pretty good, thanks, and glad to be here.
It's going to be a fun one today. We're talking about batteries. You ever use one of these things? They're pretty good.
I've heard of them. I love them. I have two small kids and they have their toys. So our AA battery burn rate is astronomical.
Oh, is that how you pronounce that word? I've always pronounced it ah. And then they get smaller and smaller. There's the tiniest one is called ah.
Yeah, I guess I've only ever seen it written. I don't know that I've ever heard it said before.
Well, it's a mystery. Unrelated to batteries, I was just before the call, I just went into Google Sheets. I was going to make a spreadsheet, as I love to do. And maybe I'm just imagining things, but I think Google Sheets is soliciting me. So I got this pop-up, and the title text of the pop-up says, Gemini can now do more for you in Sheets. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty forward. And then it says, it goes on to offer to, quote, insert content directly into my files and, quote, make a pivot table. It's like, please, I'm a married man.
Yeah, plus spreadsheet's kind of the wrong environment for that. Like, I want predictability and legibility and consistency in my spreadsheets. That's more a pitch I would love in my IDE. Like, if I'm in the right mindset, I'm like, yeah, Claude, take it away. I don't know where we're going to end up, and I don't want to know until we get there. But spreadsheet's kind of a different energy.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't... I want to be the one. If anybody's inserting content directly into my spreadsheet, it has to be me because I need to know what content.
It's
Code.
True.
Who cares?
I don't want vibes with my spreadsheet. I only want transparent numbers.
Okay. Are you prepared for this story about batteries?
As prepared as I'm ever going to be.
And before we get started, I should say my main source for this episode is an article called Power Struggle from the extremely good blog tedium.co. Highly recommend you check out that article and other articles on there if you like this podcast. Great site. So, on the morning of December 14th, 1995, Eveready Battery Company issued a press release announcing an exciting new breakthrough in the world of alkaline batteries. Their Energizer line of products would soon be getting a marvelously convenient new feature, a charge tester, built right into the battery.
Are we talking about the little colorful strip?
Yeah,
when
man.
You push it. Oh man, I love those. They changed the game completely.
Yeah. But then it got changed back. We'll talk about it. I think they're pretty cool, actually.
Why is that? I haven't thought about them in a decade, but in my youth, they were fascinating and so exciting. It was like the battery of the future.
I know. I hadn't thought about them for a really long time until just the other day. It hit me like a lightning bolt, and I was like, oh my God, what happened to those things? No longer would Energizer fans be forced to agonize over how much charge was left in their batteries. In fact, no longer would consumers even have to take their batteries out of their devices to check them, because these new Energizer batteries would have a tester built right into the battery. I mean, wow. So fast forward to the afternoon of December 14th, 1995, which eagle-eyed listeners will notice was just a handful of hours later. Now it was Duracell's turn to surprise and delight the battery buying world with their own visionary leap forward in convenience. Duracell's new innovation was a feature they dubbed Duracell Power Check. What was Duracell Power Check? Well, it was a new species of charge tester, for checking how much energy is left in a battery. But unlike the expensive and cumbersome battery testers that are already on the market, this one would be incredibly built right into the battery itself. Can you believe it, Manuel?
I can barely believe it.
Not one, but two absolute quantum leaps in alkaline battery technology, which were totally not the same exact thing at all.
Hours apart. Do we know what caused the delay for Duracell? Like, what made one of them come out first? Like, my headcanon is definitely like too much committee work on the first PR, or maybe the first press release. Like, they were going back and forth on some Oxford comma things. It's the sort of thing that can really haunt you.
I don't know. They were behind the ball. They were behind the eight ball on this one. but just barely. So, it makes you wonder, like, did they both somehow license the same technology? Was there like corporate espionage going on? Was the mom from those terrifying Duracell ads with the rictus gripped suburban family that runs on batteries? Was she actually like a corporate honey trap who seduced and blackmailed the Energizer bunny, like in my fanfic?
It's a haunting image that will stay with me for some time. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
You're welcome. That's what we do here. So you wonder, like, was it that, or was it all just a coincidence? And that's what we're going to be talking about this episode. But first, tell me about how you remember these things.
Well, really, the part I'm fixated on is one thing you said: testing the battery level while it's in the device. That never occurred to me. I've been extracting batteries like a chump this whole time. My
Right.
childhood could have been so much more streamlined, so much easier, so much time saved.
You could have made the rounds around the house testing every battery.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was the intention. So we'll talk about the patent. That was the intention, was that you could just put your dirty hands inside the battery compartment and test the battery without removing it. But I don't think that was really made clear by any of the affordances.
I don't think they would have said it in so many words, certainly.
I thought they were pretty nifty,
They're objectively very nifty. Like, look what we're reduced to today. I have a visual aid. Like, I've got to use one of these to see how my batteries are doing. And it pairs
And while it's holding up a multimeter
with these set of probes. And I want to involve my kids in things, but like, it's pretty terrifying to hand a 3-year-old regular probes and be like, here's the battery, I'm holding it, probe the battery, but not my hands. I have good health insurance, though. It's fine.
Here's a sharp needle.
And another one to go with it. They're color coded.
Yeah. So these things were around from like 1995 to 2000. So I was in middle school / high school. And I clearly remember, as you do, going around, maybe you don't remember it quite this way, going around my house and finding every appliance with batteries and testing all of them because I thought this was such a cool idea. And also I didn't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, I definitely remember, like, those were the desirable batteries. Like, I wanted the batteries with those little testing straps on. And at the time it was normal. Now I'm wondering, did everyone at that time also crave the batteries with the built-in testers, or was that more of a niche consideration?
It was, it was sort of a status battery, which we don't have anymore.
Yeah, if someone makes a premium status battery Kickstarter, I would definitely be in for thousands of pennies.
They'll be giving them out at the next Fire Festival. The one I remember of the two implementations was the Duracell version, so I guess that means my family was a Duracell family. Go Copper Tops. I'm going to play an ad for this product real quick here, this Duracell product.
Presenting a great leap forward in batteries. Introducing Duracell Power Check. The battery with a fuel gauge so you can check its power anytime, anywhere. New Duracell Power Check. No battery is more advanced.
To describe for the listener who didn't just see that, the curtain opens on a lone Duracell battery, scrabbling along a narrow cliffside path. And as it goes along, it passes a bunch of high-tech devices that are embedded in the rock face, like ancient relics, a portable radio, a toy robot, a CD player, one of those big flip-open PDAs, looks kind of like the Q-Tech 9000. And as our protagonist crosses in front of each device, the machine comes alive as if suddenly connected. This ad sort of has a Death Stranding vibe, honestly, except they never aired the version where the Duracell battery carries a magical fetus on its belly and makes a grenade out of its own shit. For my money, the Duracell version was the more elegant design than the Energizer one. So let me describe what it was like to use. On the label of the battery, picture a AA battery. There's a plastic wrapping around the battery with the brand and maybe some safety information. On that label, it had a printed gauge which goes from green to yellow to red, kind of like a fuel gauge. And under that gauge, it says, test at 70 degrees Fahrenheit / 21 degrees Celsius, which is a hint about how these things worked. But we'll get to that. Right under the gauge, there was a black rectangular window. And to the left and the right of the window, there were these two little dots. And that's what you're supposed to do is put your thumbs on these dots and squeeze. And you got to push pretty hard, as I remember. If you don't push hard enough, the thing won't activate, which is a problem right there, right? Because the whole point of this invention is to tell you if your battery's dead, but you can't really be sure if it's really dead or if you just have the grip strength of a sickly baby bird.
I remember it did require a certain amount of determination to use. It took a while for the strip to light up. It was not a fast process, but really that only made it better. There was some amount of excitement. You didn't know if it was actually going to come up. It would sort of unevenly light up. It felt like a very real tactile experience.
It felt kind of magical. You squeeze the dots. If you squeeze them hard enough, well, at least on the Duracell version, a yellow bar fills up the window and the bar starts in the red zone and it reaches all the way across to the green zone. And then you know you have a full charge. If the bar only reaches into the red zone or doesn't show up at all, then you need a new battery. So kind of cool. Something new to do with batteries at the very least. The Energizer version was very slightly different. It's had two dots and a window like the other one, but instead of a gauge, when you press the two dots, the whole window would turn from black to yellow and the word good would appear. If the word good didn't appear, then the battery had less than 25% charge remaining. And here is an ad for that.
Look, it's the world's first on-battery tester from Energizer. You just press the dots to make sure your battery will keep going and going. A battery like this deserves to be in the spotlight, preferably alone.
Looking at the image, I'm realizing I never used one of those. I did only use the Duracell ones. I think my Energizer use has been more recent and in the context of their lithium batteries.
Wow, you moved away. You must have had a life-changing event to be open to switching battery brands like that. So that's what the product was. Kind of nifty, like we said. And from the perspective of the consumer, nifty can move the needle. Like if you're looking at two competing battery brands and one of them has a nifty tester and the other doesn't, then maybe you might get the nifty one, right? However, that is not how this played out. It quickly became apparent that no, there was no corporate espionage going on here. So the Energizer Bunny was eventually released from Eveready's underground black site in the Nevada desert with only minor injuries. The reason these two press releases happened on the same day was much simpler than that. Eveready did their announcement, and of course the Duracell people are listening to every announcement Eveready makes. So the Duracell people were like, well, we got the same thing. We got to fire off our press release right away to make sure everybody knows that we have this shit too. And immediately after this, of course, the two companies' IP lawyers get on a conference call and start trying to work out what the hell happened here. Duracell is saying, you can't steal our invention. We have a patent. And Eveready is saying, nuh-uh, we have a patent. So they fax each other the patents. And wouldn't you know it, both companies have been working off completely valid patents, both issued by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for the same invention.
Like, same underlying implementation.
As the courts worked out later, yes.
Whoops.
Whoopsie doopsie. This is not supposed to happen. But, I mean, I get it. Think about how complex it is to keep track of all the inventions that people claim ownership of.
Yeah, Einstein doesn't work there anymore, so, things fall through the cracks.
Yeah. In 2024, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office received 793,824 patent applications. And for each one, they got to have people with industry knowledge read through the application, understand the invention well enough to assess its novelty with respect to the landscape of other inventions, including ones with patents that haven't yet been approved. So, yes, this was a fuck up by the patent office, but I think it's an understandable fuck up.
Definitely.
But what was the invention disclosed by these patents? How did it work? Well, an alkaline battery is a device with two terminals, positive and a negative terminal, which are kept at a relative voltage to one another through dark alchemy involving zinc, manganese dioxide, and the blood of Christian martyrs. When a battery is fresh from the factory, the voltage across the terminals is about 1.5 volts. And for every bit of power that the battery supplies to your Spytech long-range microphone, or your Spytech walkie-talkie, or your Spytech Reese's camera, which is a toy camera disguised as a box of Reese's peanut butter cups. For each little bit of power the battery supplies, some of the zinc binds to some of the manganese dioxide, and the voltage across the terminals gets a little weaker. And once all the martyr's blood has been squeezed out, the battery can't provide any more power, and the voltage across the terminals comes to about 1.1 volts. So if you have
a little hard to follow, just because now all I can do is picture like a martyr's blood battery brand and the branding that would go along with that. And
you clean up.
Maybe you'll address this later on, but I'm like, could you then have the on-cell battery tester show up red instead of yellow, so that like when you squeeze the tabs to test the level, that's a premium product that should be launched on Kickstarter. We should already be messaging factories on Alibaba about this.
That episode hasn't aired yet, so I have time.
There's time.
So if you have a battery, you can actually test, as you demonstrated that Manuel, you can use a multimeter to test how much voltage there is across the battery's terminals, and you can therefore infer how much charge it has left. Now, most households don't have a multimeter lying around because most Americans aren't dweebs like you and me. So in the 80s, battery companies would make and sell testers, which were usually standalone devices, or sometimes they could be built into the plastic packaging that the batteries come in. And you could use the tester to check whether the battery was full or empty or somewhere in the middle. So the patents in question here are not for battery testers in general. Those already existed prior to 1995. What these patents disclose is a method of building a voltmeter into the label of a battery. That was the novelty. So one of the patents, US Patent 5015544, was applied for in February of 1989. And this was the patent that Everready ended up licensing for their Energizer line of batteries. The patent applicant was Strategic Energy Limited, a company founded in Beverly Hills, California, by inventor James R. Burroughs and his partner Alan O'Kane. It seems like these guys were both pretty private people. I couldn't find much about them online. Reporting on the patent dispute in 1998, the Wall Street Journal called Burroughs, quote, a one-time Avis rental car franchisee in Los Angeles, which is a pretty sweet inventor bio.
Yeah.
And it said he, quote, came up with the idea when a flashlight failed him on a hunting trip.
Now, who among us has not been failed by a flashlight at a critical time?
Right. Although usually because it's just not clicked into place, right?
Always something.
But it's a universal human experience. In The Last of Us, sometimes your flashlight stops working and you have to like shake the controller around to get the flashlight to work again. It's pretty fun.
Very tactile experience.
Yes, very true to life. And I want to be like, I don't know, man. Would a built-in voltmeter on the battery have really prevented the battery from failing on your hunting trip? You still would have to open up the flashlight and check your battery, in which case just bring some extra batteries, right?
Well, I envision, I kind of saw the use cases more the following. So you have, in your house, you have like 3 categories of batteries. You've got like the ones that are in the original wrapping. Those are good, right? Like they're from the store, they're good. And then you've got the ones in a device. They're busy, they're working, they're doing their thing. But then you've got like the bowl, the box, the bag, whatever, of batteries in an intermediate limbo. And like, are they good? Are they bad? Where did they come from? Did they come from a device that requires like a very high voltage, but maybe they could still work in like a clock radio or something? Are they actually totally dead? And you like someday will take them to a battery recycling place if you can ever find where one of those is. Is it from, are they actually just like brand new batteries that ended up in the wrong bowl for some reason because someone was overzealously unpacking batteries? The triaging those is very painful. Unless you have the tester strip, then it's actually fun and a feat of strength because you got to really push those tabs.
Yeah, it's like an arcade game. Grab the batteries out of the, I like that idea. Grab a battery out of the drawer, test it. That makes a lot of sense. That was not what they envisioned for it, but it's totally a valid use case. Burroughs' partner, O'Kane, is described in the same Wall Street Journal article as, quote, a Portland, Oregon attorney and real estate developer. And I get the impression that O'Kane was brought in because of his legal expertise and Burroughs was the main investor. That's often how that goes. I'm going to quote at moderate length from this patent because I can kind of hear myself in the writing. I think I can hear some of Burroughs' frustration at the little technical annoyances and distractions that needle us in this modern world. So, quote, most individuals test their batteries by turning on the device in which the batteries are installed. If the device operates, the individual is normally satisfied that the batteries are operational. Some individuals will test the batteries on a battery tester to determine the condition of the batteries. Some individuals will even test the batteries under both loaded and unloaded conditions to measure the voltage drop. Although it is not complicated to test batteries, it is time-consuming to disassemble a device, remove the batteries, test the batteries, and if they pass the test, reinstall the batteries in the device. It is normally not possible to test new batteries at the time of purchase because of the protective packaging. Like, I feel you, man. That's annoying. But maybe you should have started a podcast about it instead of filing a patent.
He's trying to be the change he wants to see in the world.
Yeah, I can't knock it. All I'm doing here is complaining when I could be inventing the solutions to all this technology that blows. So the other patent was U.S. patent 5059895, which was applied for in the next year in 1990. There were 4 applicants for this patent, and I won't bore you with their names because the important thing is that the assignee of the patent was the Eastman Kodak Company. And this is the patent that ended up being licensed by Duracell. So just to recap, Energizer licensed the patent from Strategic Electronics, Duracell licensed the patent from Kodak, and if you need a mnemonic device for this, it's ESDK, so just remember, eat shit, Donkey Kong.
Always, always will.
Yep. Make a flashcard.
Don't need it. I have the mnemonic device.
Yeah, now you just know. I say eat shit Donkey Kong probably 3 times a week when I'm playing Mario Kart. So what was the actual invention? How did our friends at the battery factory create that magical, childlike experience of pinching a battery until your thumbs turn white and the word good appears on it? So here's how it works. It's pretty simple. You can visualize it as a stack of components. At the bottom of the stack is the battery itself, which if you've never seen a AA battery naked because you're not a battery doctor or some kind of battery pervert, the battery cell is a metallic cylinder roughly the size of a AA battery. Almost the whole surface of the cylinder is the positive terminal, and there's a little like hi-hat drum looking thing on the very tip of it, which is the negative terminal. Sometimes the negative terminal is the big one and the positive terminal is the small one, but one of the terminals covers most of the surface of the cylinder. When you buy batteries at the store, most of this metallic cylinder is covered with a flexible plastic label such that only two small areas of the battery are exposed, one for the negative or female terminal and the other for the positive or chode terminal, and those are poking out of the plastic. Anyway, so at the bottom of the stack, we have the battery cell itself, this metallic cylinder. On top of that, we have a dielectric layer. This is just a thin layer of something that doesn't conduct electricity. In the Duracell Power Check, I found a video of somebody ripping one of these things apart. It sort of looks like a Band-Aid. It's cute. It's like the battery got a little boo-boo. On top of the dielectric layer, you get a conductor, and I'm going to call this conductor the heater for reasons that'll become clear in just a moment. The heater is a very thin layer of conducting material that is not in contact with the battery cell because of the dielectric Band-Aid that sits between them. So under normal conditions, there's no voltage across the heater, except there are 2 holes cut into the dielectric layer, one hole over the positive terminal and one over the negative terminal, which if you remember, one of the dots was on the sort of the side of the battery, the main wall of the battery, and the other was on the very tip of the battery. You had to push them. That's part of what made these things kind of tricky to use is you're not pushing them directly toward each other. You're pushing or in the same direction. You're pushing the dots perpendicular to each other. And that's because of what the battery cell looks like underneath. So if you squeeze the points where the holes are, it pushes the contacts of the heater through the holes in the Band-Aid, and voila, the battery puts a voltage across the heater. And the heater, when it has a voltage across it, generates, you guessed it, heat, as most materials do when a current flows through them. And we're able to manufacture, and we're in 1995 able to manufacture, essentially to order materials where you're like, I want a material that when you put 1.5 volts across it will heat up by 5 degrees Fahrenheit over 10 seconds. You just start with something that conducts electricity and you put additives into it until it's got the right thermal properties that you want. So now we've got a device that generates heat every time you pinch it. Awesome. But our friends Everready and Duracell didn't stop there. No siree. On top of the heater, they put yet another layer, and this layer we will call the screen. The screen is made of something called a thermochromic material. Thermochromic, which just means when you heat it up, it changes color.
Like the fish tank thermometers, like the ones that's like a sticker
Like the
you
fish
put on
tank
the outside.
thermometers. Exactly, Manuel. Exactly. You're probably also familiar with a mood ring.
My childhood experience is geared more towards the fish tank thermometer because I had a fish tank filled with fish. R.I.P.
What did you do when you didn't know what emotions you were feeling? You just looked at the fish tank?
I looked at the
guess
fish
that
tank,
works.
and then I looked at the little temperature strip to see if they were at the right temperature.
I mean, that's a perfectly valid use of it. I never had a fish tank, but we had I had sisters who wore lots of hypercolor clothing. You don't see that anymore either. I wonder what happened there. All materials are thermochromic, right? If you put enough electricity through them, or almost all of them, right?
And everything melts if you throw it in a volcano.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but you can custom design a synthetic material using liquid crystals or what have you, or liquids using a liquid crystal technology or what have you, that is thermochromic in just the right way so that it changes from black to yellow at a particular temperature. You see where this is going.
I do see where this is going.
And finally, over the screen, you put a label. The label, which, if you're keeping score, serves at least two functions already. Obviously, it serves the normal purpose of a label, which is informational. It probably has the brand, the size of the battery, maybe an expiration date, maybe a serial number. The label also serves as an insulator over most of the battery surface, so only the tips of the whole thing are conductive and none of the implementation details are exposed to the user. And now it serves a third purpose because the patent calls for the label to have a transparent window allowing the user to see the screen, and also a printed gauge, which brings the user's attention to the screen and may include instructions for interpreting readings. I just don't think we appreciate labels enough is what I'm trying to say. They're very versatile.
And important. That's why I own a label maker, and I print my little labels and affix them to things. And then I forget what font settings I use. And the fonts and sizes are often a little different. That's pretty rough. But what am I going to do? Go back and reprint all the labels? Maybe someday, but not this day.
Maybe. Another chance to use your label maker.
Another chance to use it.
I love that, Manuel. I love all these details we're getting about your life. So that's the invention. One more time from the bottom. The invention is metallic battery cell. Above that, dielectric Band-Aid. Above that, heater, which is a little strip of conductive material. Above the heater, you got the screen, which changes color when heated. And finally, wrapping the whole thing up is the label through which you can see the screen and which may have some dots and a gauge printed on it. So there you have it, folks. The Duracell PowerCheck battery, also known as the Energizer, no specific trade name for this feature.
That one's almost as catchy. It ends up feeling a little bit quanta because to measure it, you have to use up some of the charge. So
yeah,
is it still good? What's its charge now? I better test it again.
Right.
You could get into some real trouble that way.
Yeah. And I did. I probably wore out a lot of the batteries in my house going around and poking at them like that because, I didn't know how to talk to girls. So you squeeze the dot. So yeah, it's magical, right? You squeeze.
It is magical.
You squeeze the dots. A little secret magical message appears, and the message tells you either, yes, you have enough energy to listen to Nine Inch Nails' raw but vital debut LP, Pretty Hate Machine, on your Discman, or no, your batteries will be dead before you even make it to the slow, pulsating anguish of track 5, Something I Can Never Have. It's a battery tester built into the battery.
It's feeling like in hindsight, there's really a missed opportunity for a Willy Wonka-esque promotion, what if there were 10 batteries mixed in, the Energizer variety, where when you push the tabs, instead of saying good, it's like, you're a winner, you get a tour of the factory.
Manuel, you have predicted the future and stepped on my joke.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, but you should have been working at Energizer in the 1990s.
I do love batteries. They're very important.
For all this shit I'm talking about batteries, I do like them.
I mean, that's how it is with the things you really love. Those are the ones you're passionate about. You're like, it could be better, though. You could bring back this
Why
thing.
have you done this to my baby?
I'm passionate about batteries.
Yes. Well, I called the right man. Now, like I said, both companies' implementations of this were essentially the same, but different in some details. And I think the Duracell implementation is superior. So in the Energizer, the screen simply turns from black to yellow and displays the word good if you have more than a certain amount of juice, which is supposed to be about 25%. The Duracell Power Check has an actual gauge, so the screen displays a yellow bar that fills up to full width at 100% charge, half width at 50% charge, and so on, right?
That seems way better.
It's way better. It makes way more sense. But it wasn't in the Strategic Technologies patent, and something like this was in the Duracell patent. Do you know how they did it? Do you know how they made the gauge work that way?
I do not know. Is it like the higher the voltage, the hotter it gets, and then like different parts of the like little thermometer strip have different thresholds?
Yes, except and they did it. It's so yes, except they didn't even have to order different materials for different pieces of the strip or make like a gradient in conductivity through the strip, because all they needed to do was slice it into like a tapered trapezoidal shape. So it's maybe 7 millimeters across at the positive end, 3 millimeters across at the negative end, and so it has a cross-sectional area that varies over the length of the heater. And so when
there are trapezoids involved, even better. Like, I love it even more now.
Why if they're going to put trapezoids on, why not put it on the outside of the battery where you can see the trapezoid and experience the trapezoid?
Yeah, maybe we'd still have them if only they had done exterior trapezoids.
So when the current flows, so you understand, but when the current flows through the heater, the narrower part heats up faster, because, there's less matter to heat up. And so if you only have 50% battery charge, then only the narrower half of the heater gets hot enough to trigger the thermochromic effect.
Yeah, it's narrow, so the electrons rub on each other more and the friction creates more heat, I think is how it works.
Yep, that's right. That's how you get digital. So interestingly, in the Kodak patent, which remember, eat shit Donkey Kong. So the Kodak patent is the one licensed by Duracell. The gauge effect is achieved a bit differently. So in the original patent, the instead of the heater being tapered in the patent, the screen itself is tapered. Same effect, right? One side of the screen takes more heat to heat up. But at some point during implementation, the Duracell people must have decided it made more sense to taper the heater instead of the screen. I don't know why.
Maybe it's just easier to manufacture or something,
right.
Different
it's
materials.
Probably just easier to manufacture. You got to squeeze the liquid crystals into a weird shape otherwise. So by 1995, Energizer has sunk millions into this fancy new onboard tester that they're hoping is going to finally get them the edge on those Duracell bastards up in Bethel. And meanwhile, Duracell has sunk millions into their fancy new onboard tester that they're hoping will finally put the last nail in the coffin of those Energizer bastards down in St. Louis. And now they find out they both have the same exact feature. And so both companies are kind of fucked unless one of two things happens. If one company can sue the other company and get their patent revoked, then great, they can be the only company with this tech. Or they can strike some sort of cross-licensing deal where both companies pay licensing fees to each other, and all the money goes around in a big figure eight, and everybody gets bonuses, and they have a big party. There does end up being a patent dispute, which goes to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, which gets to adjudicate the dispute, even though the USPTO were the guys who fucked this up in the first place by accepting two patents for the same thing. You can't sue the USPTO about this, they asked. And so it's a patent dispute. It takes a long time to resolve. It takes years to resolve. But in 1998, the USPTO rules that Eastman Kodak is not entitled to their patent since it discloses the same invention as the other patent. Kodak tries to go through the strategic patent claim by claim and be like, oh, hey, you didn't mention this little detail that's in our patent, so technically it's a different invention. But the patent office says, no, shut up. Stop nitpicking. They literally use the word nitpicking in their decision.
Yes. And
rule that Kodak is not entitled to their patent. This a lot of patent disputes go this way, where it's just like, can we find one or two little things that we said that the other patent didn't quite say, that gives us priority. And in this case, the answer is no. And in 1999, more good news comes for Burroughs and O'Kane. They emerged victorious from Nerd Court. the patent office rules that their company, Strategic Electronics, is entitled to Duracell's patent and all the associated royalties.
So
I love it when the underdog wins.
You can finally get that second Hertz franchise.
Yeah, Avis. He's an Avis man, please.
Oh,
he has an
no.
Avis pennant hanging from his Zoom background.
Forgot the details.
I should have had a mnemonic device for that. Fuck. Anyway, I love this story. It's sort of like the Karate Kid of short-lived 1990s voltmeter innovations. However, it's not really clear how much actual money Strategic saw out of this. The Wall Street Journal says the dispute was over millions of royalty dollars, but they also say that Duracell was paying Kodak 0.225 cents per battery in licensing fees. And if you do the math and you assume the deals were roughly the same, which may not be true, that comes to, for that to come to $2 million, Duracell would have had to sold roughly 1 billion PowerCheck batteries.
It's a lot of batteries. And I would imagine
that's a lot of batteries.
The legal fees must have been eye-watering.
Yes.
To have like a specialized multi-year dispute like that.
Yeah. Can you imagine the heads of R&D sitting in the conference call between the lawyers just getting more and more deflated as they realize, oh no, I thought I was going to have the killer feature that made this company soar to new heights and actually change the game and not at all. Now it's just a big legal headache. Yeah. Maybe they did sell 1 billion of these. Seems high to me. What do I know? In any case, I tend to doubt that anybody was set for life off this deal. I would bet the lawyers, as they so often do, got the biggest slice of the pie here.
So it goes.
And another reason this can't have been very lucrative for anyone is, Manuel, when was the last time you saw a Duracell PowerCheck battery, huh? Where'd they all go?
I don't know, a long time ago. This is I haven't thought about it in years, but this is, suddenly bringing up a gap in my life I didn't know existed.
Yes. The other night, like I said, when I was brutally assaulted by the memory of spending hours testing every battery in my house in 1997, so I sat down to research this episode, I was wondering why you don't see these testers anymore. And my educated guess was it probably turns out these things give you thumb cancer, or when they're heated above 85 degrees, they start to leak sarin gas or whatever. Yeah,
also
sure.
A risk I'll take.
Sure.
I'm like that. Go ahead and put it in the disclosure. It's not going to affect my behavior. I want to know how that battery is doing in a fun, whimsical way. That makes me think of fish tanks.
I'll die doing what I love.
Exactly.
Which is knowing how much power is in my battery. But that's not what happened. So as far as I can tell, as far as we know, they were safe for household usage. So why aren't they around anymore? Because they were nifty. And according to a 1997 article from Supermarket News, a news outlet serving food retail professionals, market research by Duracell and Everready indicated that upwards of 90% of consumers liked the testers when they tried them.
It seems low, to be honest.
Right. Why wouldn't you like it? What do you not like? Who uses it and is like...
Yeah, where is that 10%? We got to go talk to them and educate them and right think.
Haters. Anyway, that sounds wildly popular. And for the record, I don't hate this idea either. I would probably be in that 90%. It's cool. I'm not mad at it like I'm mad at a lot of other technologies, right?
Right.
So was it the lawsuit? Did they stop making it because of all the legal fees? And I don't think that explains it, because both sides expressed in the press openness to a cross-licensing agreement. And if this was a huge hit and customers loved these and wanted to buy every single one on the catch them all, then Everready and Duracell would have just kept the testers probably and made a cross-licensing agreement. Neither would get a competitive edge over the other, but at least they would both have a feature that none of their competitors had, and they could further consolidate their shared grip on the market as a cartel. And they were already on the hook for R&D and marketing and legal fees. It's not like discontinuing it would help them recoup any of that money. So if there was any money in it, I imagine they would have come to some sort of deal. So I think the reason these testers went the way of the passenger pigeon is simply that, so in that Supermarket News article, they interviewed a bunch of buyers. And buyers in the language of Supermarket News means somebody whose job it is to buy inventory from suppliers for a chain of convenience stores or something.
I'm glad you specified.
Yeah.
I was picturing just interviewing people in a grocery store being, hey, what do you think about batteries?
Right.
What do you?
Right. Who cares what they think? And, if somebody tried to interview me while I'm shopping for groceries, I'd probably mace them.
Unless it was batteries, I'd be like, well, let's find a place to sit down, because we're not going to get this done in a quick 30-second conversation. You're going to be using the free response field of your form.
They interviewed Bill Liesenfeld of Houston, who was one of these buyers, and he said, our stores are in low-income areas. For our customers, battery sales are primarily price-driven. Generic brands, which cost up to 80 cents less per package of 4 AA batteries, typically outsell both Duracell and Eveready. Another buyer at a leading Midwest wholesaler put it more bluntly. He said, I have not yet heard a single comment from consumers about these testers.
That is enormously bleak to me, and it for the following reason, because it is, like this feature that so many people worked so hard on, and we've exactly quantified the value. Or I guess we've bracketed it. We know that they're not their life's work, but major accomplishment, it's worth, maybe it's worth 10 cents. It's not worth 80 cents, though, we've learned. And that is
didn't even deserve comment.
Rough, Yeah, exactly. We don't even have the comment. We just have the revealed preferences where, if it was like 3 cents, maybe someone would pay 3 cents for it. They wouldn't pay 80 cents, though. We know that from the data.
Mm-hmm.
I hope my work never gets quantified in that way.
Mine doesn't get, as a site reliability engineer, I can tell you mine does not get quantified at all until the website's down. Nobody wants to pay a single cent for reliability until they don't have it anymore. So I can identify with this plight. So overall battery sales in 1996 were only, the first year that these devices existed, were only 6% higher than the previous years, which is an extremely boring number to the industry. One article I read mentioned that Eveready was even planning to pump up sales by doing a contest where some of their batteries, when you squeeze the tester, would show the word "win" and you'd win a cash prize. And you're right, it's like Charlie in the battery factory, which would be really fun.
And with the battery factory, it's really easy to picture how everyone in the tour group but one comes to a grisly end.
God. As soon as Charlie and Chocolate Factory is in public domain, I'm going to try to get this greenlit. Augustus Gloop falls into a lake full of battery acid. So anyway, I think we can chalk this one up to the simple explanation that nobody wanted these batteries. Nobody cared. As Nelson Rodenmeyer, marketing director for Winn-Dixie stores, put it, people have to buy batteries once they go dead, and they're going to continue to purchase them with or without on-battery testers. And I think Nelson Rodenmeyer hit the nail on the head. The vast majority of battery buyers do not give a fraction of a shit how much juice is left in their batteries. You put your AA batteries in the remote control or the flashlight or the Tiger Electronics X-Men game, and it works for a while, and eventually it stops working, and you take the old batteries out and you put the new batteries in.
I have no evidence for this position, but I'm going to expound on it anyway. I wonder if it's also to some extent like the battery device is changing. Like a much higher percentage of my devices now have some kind of battery level meter in them. Like even pretty cheapy toys will have like a little low battery LED, like some indication that you're not like going to be toast now, but like it's time to make sure you've got like some spare batteries on hand, maybe before starting a play session you change it. Back in the 90s, I don't think that was the case at all. Only a pretty high-end device would incorporate something like that.
That's a great point.
So it's the devices themselves have it. And I also wonder if there's it seems like Duracell and Energizer both kind of chickened out at roughly the same time. So it's one of those things where it's like the Winn-Dixie manager said, it's not like I'm going to be like, well, I guess I just won't have electronics anymore if there's no battery tester. Like I still have to buy the batteries. Right. But if there had been only one battery brand that had the tester, maybe I would have preferred it. Duracell, you should have held on a couple more years.
Yeah. But also batteries were, as you say, alkaline batteries were, their peak was really in the late 80s, early 90s. Now most of our batteries are either in disposable, or they're part of some disposable thing like a disposable vape, or they're rechargeable. You can recharge them by plugging them into a USB cable like a rechargeable vape. So this is sort of like a Hail Mary by the battery industry to become relevant again.
Maybe they should have just moved away from the utility and more into the aesthetics. forget using it as a meter. Like maybe you get your lotto numbers on there, or maybe like a little proverb
Different
or some
Pokemon.
wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like Fortune Battery.
Yeah, that I'm putting that idea out there free in the public domain.
Yeah.
Like, no licensing fee.
Somebody build it.
Up for grabs.
Yeah. So nobody really wanted them. And if the testers aren't getting anybody to buy a brand name battery rather than a generic one, then the technology is doomed, because these things are not free to make and they raise your cost of goods sold. You just had to build batteries before and labels, but now you got to manufacture a Band-Aid, you got to manufacture a heater, you got to manufacture a screen or outsource them. And you got to glue it all together for each battery you make, and it's a volume industry. You make millions of them. So raising your cost of goods sold in a market as ruthlessly optimized as alkaline batteries were by 1995 just doesn't make sense unless you have some new feature that makes all your competitors' batteries look like gutter trash. And this was definitely not that. So I kind of wish these were still around. Wish the market hadn't trashed these. It's a pretty cool feature. Transparently gimmicky, but cool.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool. Now that I know more about how they're made, I'm wondering if there's an aftermarket option as a possibility. What if someone made like a little sock you could kind of wrap around the battery? Maybe a value-added reseller who's like, we take the Duracells, we put the little sock on it, we sell it to you. I would like that. Full disclosure, I don't know if I'd pay for it,
right.
But I would like it. Maybe up to 80 cents. The immediate use case I picture is like showing my kids, having them be uninterested, and then like yelling at them for not being more excited about this strange, non-relevant artifact from my childhood. That's an experience I don't get to have very often, but feels like a pretty classic parenting sort of thing.
That's a great idea. So like on the one hand, I wish it was still around. On the other hand, it's a blessing that it didn't last for it's worse for me when a technology isn't useful but ends up having to stay in anyway because everybody's afraid to go back, like digital clocks on ovens, where like they're not doing anything, but you can't sell an oven without a digital clock now because it's going to be sitting next to one with a digital clock and everybody's going to be like, ooh, that one has a clock.
Yeah, you don't want to beclown yourself on the Home Depot showroom.
Yeah, this whole invention was funded because everybody's always grasping at whatever might make them year-over-year profits. And Duracell and Eveready had already both figured out how to make alkaline batteries a long time ago. Their batteries work fine. They had optimized the process to where battery production was minimally expensive. They found the minimum of that curve. Even by 1995, all remaining optimizations to the alkaline battery were, as far as consumers were concerned, minor. Maybe we could get a new coating that makes the terminals 10% more resistant to corrosion, or maybe we could find a cheaper way to like attach the label, shave off 1/10 cent per unit. But we weren't going to get a huge new breakthrough that could revolutionize the industry. All the money had been squeezed out, which is why I think those two press releases on the same day for the same feature are such a compelling symbol for the utter fruitlessness of industrial competition past a certain point in optimization. Duracell and Eveready both had these huge R&D departments whose job it was to keep figuring out how to make more and more money selling alkaline batteries. And both companies spent millions of dollars developing this on-battery tester tech. And to what end? They both emerged from their laboratories shouting, "Eureka!" and they ran into each other, bonked heads, fell over, and started crying. And as a society, we have no way to be like, all right, great, we're done. Batteries are a solved problem now. You can stop trying to make batteries better and just nationalize the industry. Instead, we're forced pointlessly to endure a never-ending succession of half-assed features, rebrands, and compromises in quality while we drown in advertisements. If we had an actual democratic society, one that puts day-to-day decisions directly into the hands of people making the thing, then this bullshit would never make it to the shelves. We could reclaim all that energy, all those days, all those lives that we waste in pursuit of the big new thing and in the manufacturing of demand, and put them toward something better.
Then would we have missed out on batteries with built-in test strips? I don't know, everything's got tough trade-offs.
Yeah, that's a great point. My childhood would have been, well, I probably would still know to this day that something was missing cosmically from my childhood. Good point, Manuel. Anyway, Manuel, that's it. That's all I have to say about these battery testers. How are you feeling?
Good. It was very interesting. For some reason, when you said battery testers, my head first went to like the little like separate machine, with like the little like analog gauge and stuff. And I was like, oh, it's going to be like a product review or something. But then like when I saw what type of tester it was, I was like, oh man, I haven't thought about those in so long. What happened with them? And how did they work? And now I know both. And speaking of like the little cosmic gap, now I am always going to be kind of like, man, like they're gone forever.
They're gone forever.
And I'll think about it sometimes, not every day, but sometimes.
It was a beautiful moment in time.
Yeah, I feel like back then there was more stuff, like devices were a lot more specialized, there were people dabbled in all kinds of weird nonsense, and now everything's just on a phone and it's boring.
Thank you for being the ideal guest today. I hope someday we can have you back to talk about some other kind of bullshit.
I do love some other kind of bullshit. Yeah, this has been fun.
Only the best. Well, this has been Technology Blows. If you like the show, all I ask is that you kindly give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Blue Sky, username TechBlows. Our kick-ass theme music is by Magic Al. Check out magicalmusic.bandcamp.com. I've been your host, Dan Slimman. See you next week for more Technology Blows.